else to gather all the information from the supervisors. Because in our mind, we thought that we use this opportunity to see what our communication method is. So we were calling on board to all the supervisors, and they would be responsible for their staff to get their information from their staff to us, rather than have each individual person or have someone, all these people emailing me, emailing Cindy, emailing Taylor, and trying to coordinate what departments and stuff they belong to. So we sent all that information up to the supervisor. From there, on Wednesday, the Town Health Center, which is across the road, offered to have their nurses that were trained in testing to assist us. The only thing though is that we can't do testing without a thing called a medical directive, and that comes through the Chief Medical Officer of Health from the Lambton Health Unit. So what he does is he lays out these guidelines that we have, or yeah, I guess it's guidelines that we have to do so that we can do testing. So we have to do training, we have to do so many tests, we have to do all that stuff. Then we get the medical directive who offers testing in our community. We've done all that, so we bought those foods and offering testing. Chatham Kent Community Health Center comes from Chatham Kent. They're in our catchment area, so they were asking if they could extend the medical directive to them so that they could assist us. So when I called them to help unit, they said, that might take a little while, so why don't we just send out a mobile unit? So they got together 4 RPNs from different communities and an EMS. So they were able to send a mobile unit to Walpole, and we started the testing on Thursday morning, because she said, oh, we can have them here tomorrow. And I was like, go ahead, we'll fly with it, and we'll figure out what we need to do on the way. So we got to the testing, or we decided to have off-site testing in that because we had positive people in the community. There was contact tracing taking place. So we wanted to keep the positives away from the rest of the staff. So we were off-site at, the isolation tent. I'm like sucking in air. So we're at the isolation tent, and we realized it was too small for the flow that we wanted. We had great weather, which was good. So we moved from the isolation tent to the arena because the council meetings and stuff have been rescheduled or were being rescheduled. So we had the testing here, had the station set up, sent the message out to everybody. And what we were trying to do was trying to bring everybody in as a group from each department, which was good, but we had a lot of downtime while apart. Like they were fast testing. We figured about 5 people, so our calculations were way off, so we could have pushed a lot of people through. So then we adjusted and we just started bringing people in as we could. So the first day we did 120 tests, and then the second day here we did 77, I think it is. And then we also did the contact tracing tests at the health center. So that all happened. We found that we have communication problems. And it's mostly because we didn't communicate to the supervisors. This is your role in this. We just kind of sent them a message and said, do this, okay? We didn't give them really any timeline. So get this here as soon as possible. We didn't tell them why we were doing it. So it was not an oversight. We were just kind of assuming that they realized that what we wanted. So there was a communication breakdown, and that was partially our fault because we didn't tell what was expected of the supervisors, and we didn't tell staff what was expected of them. So when we're communicating, we have to make sure that we're sending the messages out, we're sending a social media, sending flyers, sending on the radio, making all these videos and things like that. So we're sending the message out, but we have to make sure that our audience is receptive. So we have to, when we get the plan done, make sure that all the pieces know what their role and responsibilities are. So everybody has a responsibility in the plan. So that's where our main communication breakdown was, is that we failed to tell people what their responsibilities and roles were. So we've done our lessons learned. We went down with staff, went through with the Lambton Health Unit, talked to the Chief Medical Officer, health staff, and found out any of the issues that we ran into, so that we're not in crisis right now. This was an awesome learning experience, and that's how I'm telling everybody that it is, because we didn't have to do this when we had high numbers. We did this when we was controlled, when everybody wasn't panicking, that we learned and that we can adjust from there. So going forward, that would be put into the plan for the mass testing. On Monday, we regrouped and decided, okay, how many people do we have to do? They were tested off-site, so we get their information to find the results, which isn't a problem. We just have to make sure that they did it. So where it stands right now, we have 27 staff members. We have 27 that we have to test tomorrow, and then 18 fire and police. The fire and police and home community care and the women's shelter were a little bit different than 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 4:30 people, because they are 24-hour shifts and things like that. So we have to stagger them. So we left them to last so that we could stagger their testing times and things. The only thing that remains, there's 4 buildings that remain to be cleaned, and those will be done on Thursday, so that'll be all taken care of. So since the start of COVID, we have done 413 tests. 262 of them have been in the last week, not even a whole week, so it's been Thursday. So we've done 262. We do have 3 active cases right now, and that's another communication thing. Because I'll call and I'll say, we have no cases, then I'll call in 5 minutes later. We have 1 case, and I call the next day. We have 0 cases, then I call the next day. We have 2 cases. So it's really confusing, and it's confusing to the community. So we have to put that information out. And it's really hard to explain because there's so many variables. What's the person who is positive, symptomatic, and the person who's in contact? How long were they symptomatic? There's a whole bunch of variables. But basically, it's the time of testing. So if a person has been isolating and they've been in contact with that person on day 1, day 5 is when the incubation period should be up. So that's generally when people are tested. So if they're tested on day 5 and then they don't get the results for a few days after that, depending on where the results are coming from, it would only seem like they're positive for 2 days, right? Because they get the results and then, oh, okay, you're done being positive because you've already spent this entire time in isolation and you're getting that result. So it seems like, oh, they're only getting sick for 2 days, but no, they've only been positive. They've been positive for this amount of time. We've only been sure of it for those 2 days. So once they're done, then it's taken back off of. They're no longer considered active. So that's how it can go from 0 to 1 to 0 to 2. So right now, the nurses are awesome. We get calls from the health unit. I call Michaela. Michaela runs the health center. She gets the call from the health unit, and she's got the contact tracing done within half an hour. And then once we figure that out, then I can update the chief and director of operations. So the staff is really, really pulling together, and they're doing really awesome. Been there every day, sometimes every day on the weekend as well. So usually every day on the weekend. So other than that, we'll be working on the actual physical plan. So hopefully I can get something on paper within the next couple of days. I could have sat down at the office and did the paperwork and did all that and just sent the staff, but I like to be at the site to make sure that if there's questions, we've had people say, I don't want to test. Why do I have to test? If I don't, what's going to happen? I didn't really have any answers of, well, you're going to get fired or you're going to get laid off or any of those. I just wanted to talk to them and say, this is why we're doing this. We're doing this for the safety of the community. And I wanted to be there in case those questions were asked because I didn't think it was up to my staff to tell them. So that's why I was on site the whole time that we were doing testing. So that's why our paperwork is a little bit later than I hoped. Also today, I got a phone call from Patricia Roach. She is from the St. Clair Wind, and I think it was, October 20th or somewhere around there, they had put out a request for one-time funding opportunity. So just verbally today, she told us that they asked us for one plan. I put in 4. We got 3 out of 4, so that wasn't bad. So the telemedicine that we had discussed earlier, we got 40,700 for that. So that includes the equipment, maintenance plan, and hopefully at least pitching in towards getting fiber optic to the health center. The homeless shelter, so we were looking at temporary homeless shelter. I did look at different buildings and things that we could do. James and I had talked about potentially using the old youth center, which was all right with the EHO. So we do have 40,000 for renovation or erection of something there. And then mental health staffing during COVID, I put in a request for 33,000 just to do some sort of interim mental health nursing there, so that we can look at mental health and addiction support for people during COVID, and doing some sort of feasibility study as to what kind of mental health nursing and services that we can bring in. So that was another 33. An FASC proposal had gone in previously, and that also was funded. I'm not really sure where that one came from or anything, but it was funded for 79,000, and that is annualized. So those are just funding things that came in today. So yay, we got money. Spend it. Anyway, that's what I have right now. Does anybody have any questions or concerns or?
Just an overall question, I guess. I guess the actions that you're taking now, although they're not scripted or orchestrated, will you be doing once you've done your testing, some type of debriefing and going through a bullet by bullet assessment of what we did right and what we did wrong and what we have to shore up on this in terms of expanding and developing our own COVID action plan, I guess?
Actually, we do that every single day. We do it every single day, but overall for the mass testing or the big testing thing, we have we did do like lessons learned, bullet points, and all that stuff, and then we'll put that into like it'll be mass testing, and this is the communication, and this is where we need to do. We ran into some issues with because the Lambton Health Unit had different communication about testing, isolation after testing, because people were asymptomatic and they weren't in contact, so they could just go out and do whatever they wanted. Whereas our communication is, you go home, you wait for the results. So we have to make sure that our communication is consistent, as well as our process. Our process is somebody comes in, we take information, it goes into the computer, labels, put it into the cooler. Theirs is requisition, label, goes in the cooler, there's no input. So we went through our lab, and our lab requires input. So we had a little bit of a problem there. So we talked to the health unit and decided that if we do have them come in and do that again, that they'll put it through their lab and we don't have to worry about the input staff. So
the last point I get to know is that we have identified certain counselors to assist you, I guess, in terms of a strategy development. Do you recall who they were?
I thought it was almost everybody.
The other part with that is that we need cooperation, I guess, with the other departments, I guess, that can become a part of this, whether it's the police or fire department, etc. And I guess in terms of coordination, I was going to suggest that you be the lead person, I guess, in terms of bringing everything together to produce that final product. Okay.
Yeah.
No.
My question is about the 3 active cases.
Yeah.
Are they community transmitted or are they conflict? I'm just wondering if it's a family or.
Yeah, it's a family. Yeah, and they've been isolating since November 14th. So they had been in contact with someone. So they were already isolating as a family unit. So the ones that came back were related in the same household. household. There are other people in that household that may come back positive. We're just kind of waiting on results.
And what about, like, we've all been, what if somebody gets it and they're gonna get a test again?
What we were looking at was not testing everybody. This was like a baseline, so that we could say as of, I don't know, tomorrow, the 25th or the 24th, as of November 24th, all of our programs have tested positive. I keep saying positive. Tested negative. All of our buildings are clean. We're all good, and we can look at maybe in 2 weeks testing the women's shelter, 2 weeks after, or a week after that, or 2 days after that, testing that department, like a periodic testing. Some places have mandatory every 2 week testing, or if you're going into a certain building, you have to be tested, all those kinds of things. So we can look at that, and I haven't had a chance to sit down and look at the recommendations and see what other communities might be doing, but make sure that it's worth our while to do, and make sure that we do is whatever is safest for us. So we want to determine what is our safest route.
Okay, and the question is, I read that Chatham Kent is in yellow, but I didn't understand. You know what that is?
The stages are all in different ones. I can't think of them off by hand, but the 3-year color coded. So when it was stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, color coded that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So-
I knew it, stage 1 and 2, but then they put something yellow in it.
Yeah, they just color coded the stages, so that's what that is. So I can't think of them right offhand. I know that we're not in any of those stages, so that we're good. The other thing is that Michigan is going crazy. I get alerts on my phone, just because we're up close there. Those schools are closed. I know my family over there is really concerned. They aren't coming anywhere near here. But we're always concerned about this bridge being closed. I'm always worried about the river there, because in BC, they had issues with people crossing the border. So it's always, I don't know what kind of thoughts go through people's heads when they're scared, but I always worry about that. That they just kind of float over. So.
Cody,
Yeah, just a little, just gonna try, maybe hear about the homeless there. Is there some type of, immediate, help that we can provide? Maybe is the old COVID tent, we're starting to see temperatures starting to freeze right now, starting to snow. I've, made trips for my dogs at home and got some names for them, and I feel bad seeing, the homeless walking around, cold right now. Maybe we could, set something up for them as soon as possible, so we could have, maybe some jackets dropped off to them and stuff like that. Winter coats and hats. It's getting pretty cold out there, and it's, we need to do something for them.
I know that the wellness department had been meeting about a strategy for to address that issue, and this funding was just to add to, like, sort of give some money to that plan. So I'm not really sure where we're at with that.
Yeah,
Just
but
because-
we already own the tent, right? So there's no, additional funding being required for that. I was just wondering if we could put a sign over there and say, if you're cold, come on in, we have tents and thoughts here. Grab a jacket, grab a winter hat, we can take donations and stuff like that. I don't know if it's not gonna take a big pie out of our slice of our pie, so it's kind of just like, we have to do something for them. It's pretty cold.
We can look at that. The only thing is that we're just on the edge of the second wave of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to ever have to use that tent for anything. I wish that tent would just stay empty
I
because we
realize
know
that,
it's like,
you gotta put yourself in their shoes.
yeah, no, I'm just saying for COVID, I wish
Yeah.
we never ever have to use it.
Yeah,
But yeah, that money, the proposal that I put in was for something like that. So,
that's just every time I try to address the homeless there, it's in the work.
yeah,
I just wanna see something. Taking care of them, getting them out the elements, some place where they can warm up for 10 minutes. Continue their heartbeat, as they're stepping out on the side of the road. I just wanna see them out there.
James has got some answers there.
Right now, it looks like the BYF is the most immediate solution, because a portion of that is essentially ready to go. And so there may be other options, and Charles, you talked to some others. The tent, there is a complication, again, only because we do have to use it. Looking at Michigan, the data we may have to use it is much closer than we think. So we're looking at some of the other immediate options, but luckily, there don't seem to be any obstacles in front of us for the BYF.
and then that money that is, like, we can use the money that came in for that temporary shelter or whatever, we can use that for the BYF. And I'm sure they'll let us rearrange funding and use for food and things like that, whatever, so.
So,
Yep.
so does that say tomorrow, we put a sign and say they can use that facility? Like, I'm sure they'd rather sleep on the floor in a warmer, place than on the ground or in the dumpster back at the dump. Like, what's preventing us from letting them stay there?
The only thing preventing it is renovations and staffing. But I think doing it in less than a week is realistic. Doing it, so we can look at doing it as quickly as possible. If we decide that's the route. I would be hesitant about doing it tomorrow, just because some of the mistakes we make could take more time than we waited a few days and did it correctly. But we're at a point where we should be able to move forward.
We have that money coming in and it can be renovated. I'm not sure who would be in charge of that. I don't really think the health center would be appropriate. One thing on that.
No, there is a number of other building possibilities. I'd like to bring up, I was contacted by Isaiah Noswin, and he has an old, it's not that old, but it used to be part of Shooting Clays that wants a type of steel building over there beside, we used to have those clay shooting. It's off the road a bit there, but he's going to make it available to the band there for shelter purposes. And obviously, if we provide a shelter for the males or the females, whatever which one is in priority situation, I guess, in terms of numbers, we could look at renovating that to accommodate shelter for the winter for perhaps the males. But again, we're going to need somebody from carpenter or a contractor to come in to provide us with estimates to authorize some spending on that. And that would be the same, I guess, as well, the renovations for the old rectory building. And I don't know if, we just have to pose these questions, I guess, for the sake of it, that are there any liability issues, I guess, in terms of utilizing the rectory or other buildings, I guess, that need to be offered to us. And again, with the staffing, how do we qualify staffing for providing the security or oversight for the shelter? James?
So in terms of the staffing, we should be able to utilize COVID emergency dollars and in terms of funding. Staffing is really what eliminates the liability for us. So the alternative option is looking at possibly a solution like that on private property, where we don't have the same kind of direct exposure. Depending on what our involvement was, we could eliminate some of our involvement. We may not have enough liability. We may not have staff essentially.
And I think that's what Isaiah is looking at. You would allow for some renovations to take place in terms of bringing that building up to a shelter requirements, whatever they might be. And that it would be at the band's expense. All that he's looking for is some type of rent consideration, I guess, to Ontario Works or whatever the possibility is being the landlord, I guess, for that particular shelter. And he would allow it to be on his property. And we would use it in that manner. And we would have to engage with some type of formalized agreement.
And we can certainly support that, especially if we have the building in place. When it comes to, there are some landowners and they're wondering whether they can get an upfront payment to put a building like that in place. That's a bit more challenging. But if he already has the building, that's a simpler process. And again, the issue is if it's our own building, if it's on our own property, we have to staff it to deal with the liability issue. But there's that potential for a solution if we didn't want to staff it, if it's privately run, they were collecting rent, we may not have to have staff.
On that, and we will look at that building tomorrow and inspect it and see what we can do, I guess, in terms of making it shelter. Marcia?
I just want clarification. Our homeless are not being penalized because they don't have an address when it comes to Ontario Works, is that correct? Because I know when they're not on local island, they have to have an address before they qualify for Ontario Works. They're homeless, they have no address, are they able to qualify?
Yeah, in my experience, if there was a shelter, they would have an address, they would have a temporary address, and you can't penalize them for not having an address. They can get, basic needs, but they can't get shelter. But they can, like if they had a hostel or somewhere else that can pay to direct or something like that. A lot of times they can work, miracles can have somebody sign a rent receipt that pays them the rent and they use that to support themselves. That's happened in a lot of cases, but they don't get penalized for not having that. So they'll still get basic needs.
But they won't get rent.
No,
And, but if this person wants rent, and they use that address, why wouldn't they get rent?
they could, and if they work that validated, yeah. That's what I'm saying, some people get a friend or family member to write them a receipt that they're staying there, but physically you see them walking around.
James?
Exactly. So that's typically what we run into. If they present themselves as homeless, then they're eligible for shelter assistance. But in most cases, they don't because they may have an arrangement like that. But certainly, this opens up other opportunities, and we may be able to support a person like Isaiah through shelter allowance with that possibility. But they do get basic needs whether they have an address.
And I think of anything that through the budgetary process, I guess, in terms of fiscal planning for next year, for the fourth quarter, we should draw some estimates together, I guess, to look at some proper structure, I guess, to house the homes for next month. That's a process that should be engaged previously. Okay.
Are we done with the homeless? Are we done?
Well, yeah, we're done, I believe it. I love it.
Before Kyla leaves, I just wanted to know, is there anything in place for our van employees to wear masks? Is that one of the things that we're gonna ask to be done, or are we just leaving it? I wasn't sure.
For the, their masks.
When they're in close quarters at the band office or wherever they work, are they gonna be wearing masks now? Because they
All of our staff wears their mask all the time. Occasionally take it off in their office, and I've also told them don't be going into anyone else's office either. Like, don't be sitting chit chatting and stuff, stay away. But, I can put something out that recommends that. Because I certainly do.
Yeah, I think that we have to know that it should be a recommended practice now.
The other thing, if somebody's in an office, like say James and I are coworkers in the health center, you'll see that we have plexiglass in between people who share offices. That's something that technically should be done, if people are sharing offices.
That raises an interesting point there, I guess, in terms of legislation. There was an act passed back to work legislation by the province, where you have to make all those necessary considerations, I guess, in terms of protective shields and making sure that you have the basic policies in place for mask wearing and etc. Has anybody done an internal review, I guess, of the various work sites on the reserve here to see that, number one, we're complying with the basic intent of that legislation, although it's a provincial standard? I think there are some good guidelines and some good workplace practice there, I guess, that we should be following. And if not, who is the person that's responsible, I guess, from our side, that could indicate that, say, one department is not fully complying with the necessities of safety standards, health and safety standards.
I don't think that, I know I've seen the posting out for health and safety officer, obviously, I don't know if we got them yet or not, or if that would be a facility person's job, or what that would be. But if it needs to be done, health center, you can do it if you'd like, it's not a big thing, you can just buzz through everywhere and check and make suggestions to people. So if that's something that you want us to do, we can just make arrangements with supervisors and get that done.
I've also noticed that when people enter certain departments, that maybe they will go through the full requirements of making sure they have their mask on and stuff like that, take the temperature, and actually fill out one of those sheets with the various questions on it. But I noticed that during the course of the day, when they come back, say from lunch, then they don't, they just have their mask on, they go back to their workstation. My understanding of the intent of the legislation, every time you came back into the building, you were supposed to go through the same process. Another temperature screening, another go at the question and answer sheet, etc.
I would have to check on that. I don't leave the building, so I work for lunch and such, so.
Well, I don't know, Ontario works, they're very strict on that.
Yeah.
In terms of following every rule to the T. And then I look at other departments and it's pretty lax. And I guess get back to my question, who's going around and enforcing standardized approach to workplace?
As far as I know, no one. Do you?
We did have the officers from the health center initially looking at that, but you're right, in terms of the health and safety committee, that's not something we have. So we don't have anybody that's reviewing it by the provincial.
We were in the band office one day for a meeting, and there was somebody from a health professional who was walking around, and used to taking notes and Jacinda of what needs to be put up and where, and about those shields, masks, purifiers, hand sanitizer stations, and we were going around to the band buildings and doing that while we were there, so I know somebody was doing that from outside our organization.
I don't think it was consistently followed though, or it wasn't necessarily recommendations were made, but nobody checked out to say, did you do that? The other thing that I would suggest would be HEPA filters in those rooms that have more than one employee. They aren't going to totally eliminate viruses, but they're going to like decrease air. Well, they're going to improve air quality, but decrease viruses and things that are in the air. I spoke to Health Canada about that, and they said, yeah, those are good, but you have to make sure that the filters and stuff are maintained. So if we were looking at something like that, we'd have to look at who's checking that to make sure it's maintained. Just like a log or something.
Julie?
I just did my health and safety test, and, I seen a lot of things that, as an employer, of all the programs, we're supposed to be having a health and safety committee, and they used to have one, they're no longer meeting. And I used to, as a supervisor, I would have to go around my building once a month, provide a report to, what needs to be fixed, and we get maintenance fix, whatever the teachers taught in every classroom. That fell by the wayside. No one, I don't know when they stopped doing it, but Mike was the director of operations, and I remember sending it to Ben. I mean, I send mine every month, and I don't know if everyone else was doing it, but we get fined. We get fined when we don't comply with health and safety, and that's why Cindy Williams started the health and safety committee from every department. They have representatives sitting on that committee. That's not happening anymore, and are we getting fined for those? We're not complying with health and safety. And
Yeah, I guess that's getting back to my first question, basic question.
Yeah.
Who's providing the oversight and who's?
HR used to do it. What happened?
I don't know. James is gonna find out.
In the meantime, do you want us to check, sorry, do you want us to go through and check and make suggestions? In the meantime?
I think that's what we're alluding to here, that somebody should be picking up the responsibility to do all of these items to make sure that there's some type of standardization in terms of compliance for not only the sake of the employees, but the sake of the general public and the community members as well.
They share that responsibility on health and safety committee. Lauren would be our rep, and he would go to the public works in the arena, and him and Donna would do, they go in pairs, and then the other committee members would go to another program and do that. But that was all under HR.
Okay, I guess we all agree that it needs some type of revisit, serious revisit. I guess, in terms of, reactivating those type of protocols for everyone's safety, health and safety. So we'll check on the various pieces of legislation that maybe we are not complying with fully, and I guess we'll need to strengthen, I guess, our capabilities. Those sort of compliances. So that we don't jeopardize ourselves in terms of being fined by whoever hands out the fine. And I know at one point that as an employer, you were required to have those in place, and they were supposed to make periodic checks. I don't know whether monthly or quarterly, but they were supposed to do that. And you're right. I don't think anybody's seen that for a long time. So with that, I'll take the mover and second to accept Kyle's report and update on the COVID testing and status update. Mover, please. Moved by Marcia, second, please. Second by Tyler. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Carla.
You're awesome, Charles.
I got it right.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, we will entertain Dr. Martin now and provide us with an update what's happening in the school there. I know that we had at one time discussed asking the principal to coordinate a dry run, I guess, in terms of home tutoring and stuff like that, and utilizing the community Wi-Fi. From what I understand, that hasn't happened yet. And, my concern is that we should get those types of processes in place, because we can anticipate all the pressures around us in terms of COVID-19, I guess, increasing in its intensity, that we better be fully prepared to homeschool our children. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I met today with the principal to see what we had in place for our emergency pandemic preparedness. And he told me that there's already a system in place for distance learning, like a hybrid model. There's students that go to school, like those that choose to distance learn. They have a system where packages are devised, hard copy, paper packaging, and they're prepared each Monday. Each Monday, the parents come and pick up their packaging and return the work back to the school on Friday. It's all done outside the front doors of the school. During the pandemic, he envisions the possibility of a hybrid model where this still occurs. He also told me that they're very equipped to teach online through Zoom. Should internet be available? Would internet be available to all the students? He said the students from grade 5 up, grade 5 to 8 from the school, they already have Chromebooks and they're managed from the school outside as a group. And he said that all students from JK to grade 8 and teachers, they're all part of their Google Drive, and teachers can teach a lesson on this Google Drive or a video, and if the student at home is not available at the time of the lesson, it's recorded in the Google Drive and they can access it when they need to watch it. He said the technology is already in place for that, and it's already available for that. For the students from JK to grade 4, they're still having they have a multi-device management package from Apple. They have all the computers ready. They have all the computers there. They're in the process of getting them ready for this. They have the assistance of 2 Apple techs that are working with the vice principal of coding all these so that they're managed as one package so that they can be monitored for what they're used for. And again, there will be access to the Google Drive, and teachers are able to communicate with all the students there. There's about a 2-week delay. There's a hardware that's needed to get those up and running for the event of pandemic or distance learning for all the schools. But the packages are already available today, and they have that system in place. In terms of getting them ready in an emergency, as such, the school decided to cancel on Sunday night, and the teachers, there's no school preparedness for them to get ready to get these. He said there is schedules that are made for state social staff to come into the school, get the materials they need, so that they would be able to actually teach from home through the computer systems, should Wi-Fi be available, or to make packages and leave them safely outdoors for parents to pick up and return on Friday. That being said, with the Wi-Fi, I know that James and I are working on a plan to have the best Wi-Fi available that can be. James, you want to give some details on that? Explore it?
I can, yeah. So I do have this as an agenda item later in my report, but we've talked to exploring that as a possibility of bringing a batch into the community. What they're prepared to do is install the services on a number of households. And because of the number of households we would be considering, they would waive the installation fee. So I sent you a schedule of fees that we would be looking at in terms of different levels of bandwidth. But we're not looking, it's within the range of the amount that we've already budgeted in terms of supporting the community Wi-Fi. So it could be something to consider just in terms of the survey results we received on connectivity issues from households that are trying to do online learning. What we're finding is that many of them are on 1.5 or 3 megabytes per second upload speed, and that doesn't seem to be sufficient for the kind of things we'd be looking at, like participation. So, what we've allocated already, just in terms of getting students, providing subsidy so that they can have community Wi-Fi from today to the end of June, we've already allocated $141,000. And that's just taking the part, that specific piece for the installs and their monthly community Wi-Fi. So I did a calculation for what would it take to provide the same number of households with ExploreNet for 10 megabytes, which is far more than you can offer. And we would be looking at a minimum of a 12-month contract with ExploreNet. And to do the 12-month contract, that would be $223,000. So we're looking at a difference of around $80,000 in addition to what's already been allocated. So it may be something to consider at 10 megabytes per second. You would be able to do things like use Zoom. You wouldn't have the same kind of limitations we have now. And I wanted to wait until we had this discussion with council before we made another batch purchase of community Wi-Fi radio to see what council wanted to do. But I've already talked to ExploreNet in terms of their capacity, and they would be able to do the installs very quickly. So what we would probably be looking at is trying to get as many families on board as possible. And then we would do them all within 1 week. And then likely what would happen is word of mouth would spread, and we would be able to collect information to the other families. We would be able to either do them all, but be able to do the whole process in 2 weeks or something. So that is a possibility that's available to us, exploring all the short-term options for providing greater bandwidth to community members. That's one option.
Any questions at this point? Elaine, then Marshall?
Dr. Kathy, what is in place for the special needs children that maybe like have anxiety, things like that, where confinement isn't the best thing for them to be at home? Like, what is going to be put in place for those children?
I can get back to you on that.
Marshall?
Mine was regarding the Wi-Fi. So are you saying it's the Wiccan Wi-Fi or ExploreNet? Because it can't be both. We're subsidizing, we made a motion to subsidize the homes where our students were, that, so they can get online to do their work. Up to 80, I think up to $80 a home or something, I remember the motion. So we're now taking money away from our Wi-Fi, our Wi-Fi? Is that what we're doing? That's what.
That would be an impact. So it's something that council needs.
Or would it be a request for a budgetary supplement?
It would be request for a supplement. Yeah. So to meet the difference in order to cover the cost of the
I have a quick question on that. Would it require a installation of tower?
No, through satellite.
Satellite, not face to face from the water tower.
Part of it.
Tyler?
So then when the payment of the Wi-Fi, so if they get ExploreNet, and then local Wi-Fi is still available, but then the person that has it, continue to take regular local Wi-Fi bill?
So I haven't entirely worked through all of the financial implications. I more or less wanted to see if council wanted to go in this direction. Because right now, what we're hearing through the surveys is that 3 megabytes seems to be insufficient for most families. We're looking at a way of offering that, but in terms of being prepared within, let's say, 2 weeks, everybody has their device at home and they're online. It seems like community Wi-Fi may not get it from what we're hearing in the survey. really, we're putting this option on the table because Explornet apparently can ramp up very quickly in the town.
So that brings another question, I guess, so when you get satellite, because I've had both, you get the satellite and then a basic router. But if you're streaming a couple different things off of there, it might not hold it. So some families might have to upgrade their router to get double streaming. They got multiple kids or devices in their household. Just a food for thought, so there might be a cost to the way.
What we can always do is we can have all of the families to get around that particular issue, have the families put their name on the account so that if they wanted to set something up where they're paying extra for additional bandwidth, they can do that. So that option.
Yeah, Dr. Martin there, I was just curious to see what type of plans you have with the special needs children who are going through a second wave of COVID and needing to be absent for a period of time from their teachers. These children are really comfortable and personalized with their typical teacher. It's very difficult for some of them to use online. Is there anything in place where you could create some type of strategy where they would benefit?
I know that there is something in place. I know of one particular case where education assistant does go into the home of a special needs distant learner. It's packaged because like what you said, they can't focus enough online. It's not ideal. It's not ideal for regular educational settings for younger children. So with special needs, it's more complex. So I know that there's something in place, at least for one student that I'm aware of. I could check with the principal to see exactly what strategies are in place for multiple special needs children. And at what level of special needs do they get the benefit of having a PA go into the home? So I can get back to that as well.
I'm wondering if you're aware of how many students right now are actually actively accessing online learning from our elementary school. And actually following through and doing the work.
I'm not aware of the actual numbers, but I am aware that there is not getting them to apply to return their work back. And I can get those stats of how many people are
So not so much that are in distance learning, but those who are not in school, who are home supposed to be going on the computer, doing work, how many of those are not even active? I know I'm three of nephews that are not doing any school whatsoever. They're at home, they do have laptops, they have internet hookup, but they're still aren't doing anything. Online, and full-time parental support is provided in order to do effective parents.
I believe so. I think teachers are in touch. I believe that the packages do not come back on Friday. I know the teachers will call Monday and say their new packages are ready. Can you please bring their work from last week? And then there's a discussion that's had. But it is a problem. I don't know how many, but I can find out how many people that are learning from home that are not complying to the rules that are already in place for the home learning, if you will. Because the policy, the in-school policy they had was if the materials do not come back on Friday, then they won't get new materials Monday until they've spoken to the teacher and had some kind of evaluation. Continue on with lessons if they haven't done the initial lessons.
So other things when they have their teacher who's doing the lessons, and then I must finish the work, get it in on Friday. Are there tutors in between that they can go online and ask questions?
That I'm not sure. That will ask. Follow up on Levi's on that point of tutors. It's probably going to be a good idea to pre-plan that our education system is going to need a lot of tutors after COVID to get these kids back to where they should be. It's not a if, it's a, this is going to be needed.
Elaine?
Okay, I have a question for Dr. Kathy. I believe that the success rate is really good for students that are doing the online. So I agree with the tutors, like, we probably need a lot of tutors for our kids to get the help that they need. And, I don't know, that's why, I think that's why we need Jordan's principal back and people running that so that parents can have access to the tutors. And if they want, I know some parents take me to a place called, what's that place?
So then,
Yeah. Yeah, so even if people would pay for some service like that, but I don't know who's taking care of it right now. And the other question I have is for James, Dr. Kathy. What's going on with New Dimensions? We're paying lots of bills for that upgrade of our internet. So what happens with all that money we invested in New Dimensions?
Just in connection to Explorer or something else.
No, I just remember at our council meeting November 4th, or somewhere back in there that before November 4th, that we were approving invoices. Or their invoices were coming in well over $100,000.
Yes,
And you said it was for upgrade for the administration buildings.
yes, that's correct. Some delayed by the program closures, but we're trying to bring them in. They will be back on site next week. So it was an interruption of 2 weeks.
So that's still going forward.
Oh, yes.
Cody?
Yeah, just a little question for Dr. Martin here. I know, homeschooling and all that's a little difficult even for the parents. I was wondering if they have anything in place for, say a parent has to call in for some help on tutoring, teaching their child. Different, enlightened math questions and stuff like that. I was wondering if they have a phone number in place for, teachers are willing to answer a phone, answer a few questions during this time.
I believe the teachers are in communication with parents by phone and by messenger. I use a lot of Facebook Messenger. Like phone players. So they communicate a lot that way. I don't know if there's any specific times or whatever where they will answer the phone, but I know that the phone is used a lot for that purpose between teachers and parents.
Any further questions? Tyler?
When it comes to handing the packages, is there, and I guess back at school, does the teacher create the packages and teach the class as well?
Yes, the packages are based on the weekly objectives of the curriculum that we, so. The packages will be matching with the class.
And when those packages are returned, does that same teacher talk to the parent?
I'm going to assume yes. I think that they mark it and they value it and they give that.
So when those are returned and the teacher can't get it because the teacher's teaching the class, do they have enough capacity to have another teacher be available for questions or anything like that?
As far as I know, how they're returned is they return to external.
Right.
So there's no, parent teacher talking. Dropping off, happens. The packages are outside the school, so perhaps the teacher will get them, still mark them, and they'll do the communication by phone.
And when you say the packages stop after, if they're not getting enough return, do the packages stop? I think that's the idea.
And then it's responsibility of the teacher to reach out to the parents to find out why they're not doing that. And just motivate them to come back.
Do you think that could be, like, not doing the next step is still? I just don't see that, I just, personally, I don't see that being a great idea to withhold work from them. Even if they're not, at least that's reaching out to the industry to move the next step. I know it's difficult time, but I just, first of all, I just don't see that being the most viable thing to not give them any other work.
I'm going to follow up on that. See where that long is. I agree that it's something that's approach, whether it is a motivation approach to get them to communicate. And I'm not certain that all teachers don't do it. Rely on the school. This is a kind of useful policy that
Dr. Martin, is the technological equipment initiative being addressed for immersion?
Thanks, Bob. As far as I was told, is that all emergencies also have the iPads, and they're at the same process with the others in getting set up. Because they all go with 300 volts, and you're waiting for a piece of hardware that should be in the week. And they're all going to be hosted under one, it's called the multi-device management, so that they can all be managed to the same kind of server access to Google Drive, store, and set up that way.
In terms of the implementation, how is that going to take place, I guess, in terms of lesson structure? For the immersion, yeah, I just can't quite visualize it, I guess.
Okay, it would be the same as the regular classroom. Keep in mind that it's Google Drive and Google, you're able to teach, and it's able to be recorded in the Drive, and it's able to be live streamed. So if you're using the immersion, you're teaching the range, and it's there, you can live stream it, or it's being recorded and it's stored in the student's Drive. So they can go back to that lesson and they can see the teacher and they can listen to the teacher and the there and the learning is there, and then the work is there from here back.
I guess my concern would be, would there be a requirement for real-time instruction or something for both students, I guess, to be effective?
I would say so. It's not ideal. Learning is not ideal, but it's in the kind of pandemic.
Elaine, then Cody.
Tyler brought up a really good point, and I know a friend of ours works on a different board, and the teacher who's teaching the classroom does not have anything to do with the online. They have another person who does the online and follows up with the parents. So what it looks like to me is that that teacher has a lot on their plate doing the teaching in the classroom and then doing online and then contacting the parents. Like, I believe Russ has a lot of advisors that he's hired. Maybe they can help out, maybe there can be designation for, besides the classroom teacher doing all that, the stress level is high in the school right now with all children. Can there be something done about, maybe taking some of that responsibility away from the teacher, because I think that's a lot to contact and we're not following up and sending them work back, and so we're not gonna send anything to you. So that's letting kids fall by the wayside. That's the way I see it.
Okay, two more questions and we're gonna move on. Tyler?
I guess this is a question for comment. Yeah, so that's exactly how the board that I work with, the school board works. So they have somebody that's just designated to a grade 5 class that's just doing paper packages. They have somebody that's dedicated just to virtual, so they have their own virtual classroom. And then they have somebody that's in class teaching. So, and it's working the best that it can work, obviously. But what they realize is, yes, it is very stressful for the kids, and I'm just thinking the other way around now. I think the same thing that Renee brought up is that this stress is starting to really weigh heavy on teachers. Like, I'm seeing it firsthand and personally. Like, these teachers they're not giving up, but they're just so stressed, and when you put a child in that environment, then it's not good for anyone. So I don't know how education funding works. We have the ability that if this does come to this point where, or even right now, in the year, we're still going to have the distance learning and the students that are in class. Is it possible to hire a few more teachers to help offset that stress level? And I feel like that would be good for a lot of people all around, right? Like not only the students, but the teachers as well, because their mental health is just as important as the students.
Call from the Indigenous Community Support Funds for grade for verification. The deadline is Monday, and that's not saying they do need anything for the tool for this, and that for the Indigenous support to hire teachers for exactly what you said. One for verification, one to teach online so that it's from the regular class.
Final question. Cody?
Yeah, just got a little bit of question about the paper curriculum. I was really close to like, history and culture and stuff. I know a lot of children out here lack knowledge of our own treaties, our own territories, our own histories. A lot of times we're in conflict with the non-Aboriginal community, having to back to argue our arguments because we're not taught that in our own school. Tyler mentioned a few weeks ago that they have a treaty league in some of the non-First Nation schools, and it just got me thinking, we don't even offer that in our own territory. We are a First Nation. So I was wondering if we could start teaching our children our histories, our treaties, our culture. Let them kind of know themselves if we don't indulge on that knowledge of fighting for our rights in the future. It's like wanting to battle with the shield of the swords. These crucial teachings that need to be addressed should be taught. Starts right here, our education, and our youth. So that's it's a little question of why we do not, and a little suggestion of when we can.
I went to school today to pick up some files, and I agree with you, it needs to be taught. And I was quite touched and pleased walking down the hallway with a picture with my phone, see a whole wall, say, we support Mayhawk Tree, 752 lobsters, and I took a picture of it because I was just so impressed with that. So that tells me that, yeah, it is being taught in To what extent, I don't know, but we really need to work on building the history curriculum, the history of Wapple Island, treaties, the meaning of unceded territory, the power that has, things like that, and sit on the ILC committee and the schools from the as we hear the last school board, they all, are participating in teaching treaties. Every month they do something to honor the issues of God. They did something for every child matters. So it's coming, but something more stable and more well-defined should be set for our schools. And I know in the action plan that's upcoming, we have need for a curriculum writer to ensure that curriculum is written for the use of all our students.
Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Martin for providing us an update on the purpose of the school to deal with COVID-19 and the actions that the proposal to take, and follow up, I guess, on some of the questions and providing answers to counselors on their particular issues, etc. And I would ask for a mover and second to acknowledge verbal report from Dr. Martin on the update. Moved by Elaine, second by Marcia. All those in favor? Carry. Let's take a 10-minute break.
We signed the non-disclosure agreement with Village Code, and we were agreeing with that. Did we have a legal review of that first? Dr. Mark. Yes. Oh, it's text everyone's the same thing.
Oh.
Yeah. Sounds like.
Yeah. They have their own. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, they do.
That's where
They do, and they not for a PCR. They're really interested in
Good.
together. It's awesome.
Got it.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if I should try to get a legal review first.
One last thing I would look at.
Yes.
That makes sense too.
Okay, so it's not so
So,
good.
we could ask,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. I just wanted to find out whether or not we did that. I assumed we did, but it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
I'll just send it to Charles.
Thank you.
There's actually a word. I just looked at it before we started. That's 29 for that day, you know. It's kind of one or two that. Slowly, I feel like it's just slowly creeping. That's what I hear. So I'm hearing rumors that I think the goal is they want to make it safely person free. Have 2 weeks off and 2 weeks on, so everybody will be able to. I personally also think that we're going to make it.
Did you get my computer rolling?
No, shut it
down.
down.
No, so we can either, we can do one of two things.
Derek can take it and,
Can you reprogram it?
And then they'll still.
yeah, so he'll work with, Leeway, or we can send to Alicia and she can work with Leeway, either one to get it
Doing that, what is she supposed to do?
Yeah, so you changed your password at some point, is that,
Yeah, I did, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That was the last thing the chief did was change his password, then we were shut down.
And is that, so since then you haven't been able to access it?
It seems that way, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with my computer at work on the desk, but getting that thing to work is something else. Eh?
Yeah,
It must have a sync issue because they told us to remember that everything will switch
Yeah,
with a new password, but for some reason that one didn't.
apparently not.
Yeah.
so if you're okay with that, I'll send it to Derek.
Okay,
Do you have your charging cable with you by any chance?
I might have it.
Okay. For you.
Quit falling asleep.
I wasn't. It's past my bedtime.
Yeah. Don't lose that on me, huh?
All right, I won't. When I leave here tonight, Cody, I'll have 3 laptops in this bag.
Well,
No. I'll be falling down my steps.
We're supposed to get the first.
Yeah.
So is it with the teachers, like the way it's organized with the teachers, Matt doesn't want to do it?
and go smoker
Yeah, like it's one of the worst grades. I don't know whether it's so. You have, I got it. Do you want me to do it? A big one.
Wait, but up to
I think he's been
So where?
trying to set up a duck pond,
oh yeah.
like a blind, right across the road. He's been doing that, I guess. He came over last week. And, We were laughing.
Because I have, well.
We were watching YouTube, me, Patch, and Braden.
Derek, I have a question.
Yep.
We were talking about live streaming. Is it possible to live stream the classes? The classrooms?
If they have good network,
So, because I had a couple of.
but yeah, that's possible. It's pretty easy.
Okay. Yeah,
It's a possibility.
because it doesn't seem like this pandemic's gonna go away anytime soon.
No, if a student had a camera and a teacher had a camera, that would be a good way to see that they're actually there doing the work.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, it's simple.
all right,
Yeah, if you need help with that, let me know.
okay, thanks.
So it's up to you, like, she doesn't have to take transfer, she just, it's gonna carry on all the way through. Now, like, that's something that we know too. So, once a week, or, so necessarily, you can't go through the Tuesday afternoon. So we could, I could do it Tuesday afternoon, if you want, just to try to see if it will work to help. Superorganize our items. I think I could sit her down and say, okay, let's work on something. We can work on it.
Want to call the meeting back to order?
Okay.
We're moving on to the review of the Exelon minutes. Regular council meeting minutes of November 10th, 2020. Any questions on those minutes? November 10th, regular meeting? May I have a mover and seconder for the November 10th meeting? Move by. Question? It's the,
It is part of the template, and I don't know how to do the rules. It's part of the template. And there were problems when I was reading it, because when I was trying to put the motion in, the mover and seconder weren't, I wasn't able to. So I put it in manually below
the motion.
that point there twice.
Oh, yeah. So what happened, motion to five, back to, regular format. It's a glitch that we'll have to work out. Yep.
Item number 9.
my understanding in all, in-camera sessions, that the information is generated and that stays confidential. There'll be no mention of it, I guess, in the, regular meeting format. Pardon me? That's all they're identified, yeah, so if that should be removed, it should be removed. Recall that? James, in terms of the, Christmas distribution, are we going to have any setbacks, I guess, with this, 2-week, off for staff, and will you need any type of keeping up on financial staff to get the checks out on time? Almost into December.
I've actually given them authority to work over the weekend and through overtime this weekend, and we should be on track 1 week.
Ron?
That brings up another question, we have signers.
James, you want to answer that?
Charles and I are kind
More power to you. I was mistaken, thank you.
Tyler?
Just another question on that, is there any, COVID health and safety? Distribution? Discussed at all?
We'll review that once the finance staff are back in the office. Make sure it's on for this.
Eva?
8.3, just wondered, I don't know if this is why, the membership requirements are reviewing the governance or officers and members and providing that and then they update. How are they informed officers and members at this?
I'm sorry, which number was that?
8.3, it's with regards to the off-reserve mailing list, I guess, to establish the fact that members will get their checks, and the membership department, they're doing their necessary homework to ensure that the list is up to date.
Yes, sir. They're in the office.
Thank you. Additional questions?
Come on. Sorry, not a question, just a point on the signers. If you recall, all of you were identified as signers. If you haven't gone into the bank yet to actually sign your name on the paper, you're not a signer, so just a gentle reminder to do that.
Did we get information that I missed?
Yeah, it's in an email.
Was it?
Yeah.
Read them all. I get 88 of them a day.
What's our?
Let's find out. Any more questions or clarifications required? May I have a mover, please? Will the mover for 10 minutes? Moved by Cody, seconder, please. Second by Tyler, all those in favor? Those are carried. Moving on. I believe I have the emergency council meeting of November 16th. Those minutes are That will be, taken off the record. Under number 4 on the business. Instruction is that the business conducted under in-camera session would be held separately.
I'm not sure the order, but I thought it was in light of what the information we received. Warrants and amendments. Oh, the overtime. An amendment to the motion of, what's the James called, administrative. No?
I wouldn't discuss this in open
Okay.
session.
No.
All right. So we're just taking it off. Okay.
Amy, did you have a question on the, emergency, minutes?
Oh, I was just gonna say that the in-camera items will be separate and not.
I didn't suffice at that, or in on the street. I would entertain a motion to pass the minutes of November 16th, excluding the information covered under in-camera session. Moved by Valerie, second, please. Second by Neva, all those in favor? That's carried. Chief's report, we've kept coming off a lot of the items that I was going to address in terms of that update on the homeless strategy. Quickly under the homeless strategy, we did mention the use of the old rectory building, the youth center, and to look at the renovations to get the contractor there to bring up for our purposes. And it presents a question of how do we make the decision, or who is going to make the decision whether it's going to be for the men or the women? With the odd numbers. Go ahead, Donna. Yeah. But I anticipate the old parish rectory would be usable before the one that we were looking for Isaiah's property is going to need some renovation, more expensive than what we have at the old rectory.
It could be, depending on how quickly the other portion can be refurbished, that can be done inexpensively. There would be enough portions of the building to separate them.
Okay. Cody,
Is there, more than 2 bathrooms in, this location?
There are, one bathroom is located in the portion that doesn't require remediation, and the other does require, the portion that requires remediation has kitchen and laundry facilities as well, which makes it, attractive.
So, you almost need like staff to have like a dual sense environment. And shower by the use of friendly faces during the day, and the staff there, morning and afternoon. Security guard, they sit at their, access to everything right away. It would just be a matter of hiring people, morning, afternoon, night. These people could also be in charge of taking in donations, distributing them to the developments, a fair manner. We have any talks of stuff like that? Budget or some type of employment expectation for this?
It won't take long to develop because of the work plan we have in place for the bridge and medical plan, but if you want to refine that. And we began those discussions earlier, probably the employment contract or service contract.
So to accommodate both sections, we almost need staffing.
You're gonna need some kind of staffing no matter what in our facility to mitigate liability.
And 2.1 will be the working group that we have assigned to Kyle. And for the security action planning, I have a volunteer to take the lead on that, to call meetings and to get that process rolling. Who do you want to take the lead on that? Okay. And I think one of those tasks would be to identify, if we have to go to a checkpoint to establish costs, to have a winterized checkpoint site there, I guess for the comfort and security of the people that we would be employing, I guess, to handle that, man the checkpoint. And all and any other related costs. Budget purposes. Now, with the exclusion of those, camera items. We have a mover and seconder for November 16th. Emergency council meetings. Move by. What did we?
Oh my God. We're on chief report.
Oh, back to my list. COVID strategy, we had that from Kyla. Security at our borders, and Jim, that's where I was at. Security action planning. I'm going to hand that over to Cody. Legal review, legal review of all our employment contracts by our employment lawyer to see if there's any anomalies or maybe make recommendations on consistency of implementing the employment contract. I know we've taken steps in the past to do that, but it seems to have wandered off in all different directions now for whatever reason. Christmas checks, we've identified that. Orientation schedule. Can we look at some dates for the proposed 2-day orientation scheduling? Everybody look at the calendars, they will be during the day.
Available December 22nd.
Okay. Big Christmas party. we got, people? James, what fits well with your schedule?
I'm wondering about the 14th and the 15th, so that doesn't coincide with the radio conference.
14th and 15th, is suggested.
I'm not available, unless you do it from 1 o'clock till 7 o'clock, but I'm not available all that week. Morning.
1 o'clock to 7 o'clock? 10th and 11th?
I absolutely can't do the 11th, that's the only day I can't do.
9 to 10.
What's good for you?
It makes for a busy week that week because it's already ready.
Do like the 7th on the other day.
So 7.
The,
27, 14th, and 15th.
14th is the 15th?
1 to 7.
It goes 1 to 7, I'll use the catch.
Margaret's a sandwich away.
Brianne, Johnson, sir?
Do we have the regular meeting?
Usually council doesn't have the regular meeting once the offices are shut down. Right.
So just, yeah, we wouldn't hold that.
Yeah, the staff is generally off during those 2 weeks. No, the 2 week break is from the 21st to the
First.
first, yeah. Open back up on the floor.
Do we have to do it right away or?
Well, I think there's some other exercises that we may need prior to orientation. My suggestion, I guess, in terms of orientation, you take the initiative to go and visit the various departments and ask for their operational plans, I guess, for the year, and ask them to sit down with the director, I guess, they can give you a pretty good grounding on what's happening with the various departments. Move that way.
Amy, do you already have the packages?
Everything is all together. We've got binders printed out. There's some information that's missing, but it's mostly from IFN. And that's probably it, I think. Yeah, there's a lot of information. I can start recording sessions and then you can view them at your leisure. It makes it difficult for you to ask questions.
It's becoming difficult, I guess, to get everybody to move for 2 days during the course of the day, especially when somebody has to sacrifice work day and salary, I guess, vacation time, or whatever, to accommodate that. I know the 2 areas that I want to focus on in terms of what the result of the orientation and moving in that direction is that we're going to have to look at a serious revisit, I guess, in terms of the management structure of the organization, in view of what's occurring now. And secondly is to look at, in addition to that, all the gaps that we have in policy. And my suggestion as a result of that is going to be looking at bringing on an assistant to James, the assistant director of operations, where we wish to label him, to focus on the operational side of things in terms of what would be normally covered under committee reporting and stuff like that, or reporting on a monthly basis to from managers to coordinators up to James, I guess, and that would be handled by his assistant. I would have James focusing on completion and identification of gaps in council policy, or on the political side. We have to focus our attention on here at the council table. So responsibilities for reviewing the minutes and taking care of that business to the James's assistants and assistant. We would look at James in terms of utilizing him to work on the policy requirements required by chief and council to fill up those gaps that we're identifying now, I guess, in the work there. And to have that work in conjunction with restructuring of the organization. And I would emphasize the following key points, I guess, in terms of the organization. I would look at cost effectiveness and streamlining, I guess, reporting through the system, through the committee structure, up to the band council, only where it's necessary, in terms of policy changes or the ongoing routine business of programs and departments. I think that should be covered off internally by James and his assistant to follow up on. I would like to focus the attention of council on policy development and the identification of necessary political statements and position papers that are necessary for the band in terms of looking at lobbying for increased funding in the areas of housing, etc. And that way, we would assign the necessary portfolio assignments. We would have a portfolio of council, as I mentioned before, dedicated to activities in the area of education, housing, economic development, business development, etc. And we would focus it on perhaps 6 key areas as opposed to trying to juggle 24, 25 different committees as we do that now. We do a lot of that on the operational side of things. Focus on policy resources for the band. But I want to expand on that discussion as we get there. Marcia.
Are we still on contact days for our organization?
Well, that's part of that discussion. It looks like that we're having difficulty getting everybody together for those 2 days. As I mentioned, people like Tyler here that work during the course of the day, they're going to have to identify 2 days that they're going to take off either to use vacation time or other needs, I guess. Receive no pay, I guess, extremely to deal with that. And Amy has suggested we look at providing the orientation service to upload or some type of presentation to Likewise. Well,
We may have regular council time, that way probably, available most of the meetings. That's an option.
Or weekend?
And the other option too, I also want to stress is that if you feel you don't need the orientation, why would you want to do over, I guess, to see things that you've done previously? That's right. And we're learning that we're missing a lot of necessary policy to govern ourselves.
I'm available.
I'm available. We've done weekends before, and we've also done evenings.
Weekend.
I teach 2 weeks in December.
Pretty open schedule.
Well, I guess
Saturday.
that's a question to staff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, on the other thought. If need be, I'm okay with Amy, like, I can watch later on. No, I feel like just trying to make an accommodation just for, appreciate it, but however, I think it should be necessary for you guys, honestly, it's gonna be hard for me to make things long. So I would go the route of watching meetings,
I can,
like recording, like that. I think that I'll make it work the way I like to make it work, and you guys.
question, what 2 days can people conveniently identify to entertain orientation? My ultimate suggestion is to leave it to the individual to handle the orientation in conjunction, connecting with the meeting there to get any explanation that's required from the information she has supplied. And then when we get into the actual discussion of restructuring, then we can look at the identification, breaking off into various policy discussions, et cetera. Ron?
How about the 9th and 10th during the day?
Does that work for the majority of people? I see a lot of heads nodding. 9th and 10th, that is orientation from, I think they said from, what, 9 o'clock?
9:30, 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock till 4 in the afternoon?
Give me a point.
Or you can bring your own lunch.
Bring your own brown bag.
This is the lunch shop.
There you go.
Will we be meeting here at the office, or do we know what the status of the office is yet?
I think we have a little bit more flexibility in the room, I guess, in terms of located here.
They just have less.
The only disadvantage we have is, I guess, the availability of directors and stuff. They're on call, we can bring them down here.
Chairs are soft over
Bring us over to the cushion.
there. And the sound is about.
Plus, we have kitchen facilities over there. Refrigerator, tea and coffee.
Just in regards to the that one.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Are we ready to go?
We can use the governance building. The only real advantage here is if we had multiple visitors or multiple staff. We have trouble accommodating much more in this group in the house.
Marcia?
Just to clarify, the format then for orientation is what? We're gonna have different programs coming in and giving us their deal? No?
That would take 4 days.
What's the format?
So there's PowerPoint presentations, you'll have a binder of information to follow along. We'll just highlight information, and then when you want to get further in depth into each area, you can do that on your own time. Because not all of you will need all of the information. There's program briefings that are about a page to 2 pages for each program. James will go over the operational stuff. I will go over the political projects and where we're at with all of those. And a quick overview of the political structures, like the national, provincial structures that we're involved in, and any actions that have been happening there.
So are we getting these binders before?
Well, I think you got 90% of them now.
Yeah, they're sitting in the office.
They're on your laptop.
Could you maybe send Amy the last year's orientation agenda?
Yep, it's in the package as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it in the package?
Yeah.
Does that kind of show you what we all go through?
I don't think it's changed in 30 years.
And
Okay, so the 9th and the 10th, 10 till 4.
Will you move that? Second, please. Second by Ron, all those in favor? Here we go.
Catering library.
Wait, who? Sue Shelley.
Question to,
Yep.
tomorrow, the 25th, do we still have that trust fund special council meeting?
Nope.
No? Okay.
We will need two replacements on the trust board. Is it not? Council appointment? What? I thought that was for the green.
So the Petronom Trust, that's one of the pieces of information you're missing still, but that'll come forward to you this week. But how it works is the counselor who's voted in with the highest votes is automatically appointed, but there are also other appointees that need to be made. And it's because they have a staggered term for the trustees. So that information Rose sent over, so I'll send it over to you guys this week with the motion, so we can reschedule that meeting.
The problem in the past that the person with the highest votes hasn't necessarily complied and sat on the trust board as well. Is that?
I don't know if I can do that, because don't we have to work for training and I have another contract?
Yeah, so they do training through the National Aboriginal Trust Association. There's training in the past when the counselor who has the most votes has elected to not sit on the trust board. Council has appointed the next highest vote getting counselor.
And then the third, then the fourth,
How long is the training?
I think, I'm not positive, I think it might be 2 weeks. But it's like an online training. I don't know the details of the time, but I can look it up for you.
Yeah.
okay, Amy will finalize the message. Moving on. Wait. That's it. May I have a mover and seconder for the chief's report? Moved by Elaine, second by Marcia, all those in favor? Carried. Moving to the Director of Operations report. Any requests?
So I'm gonna ask for a motion that you give me authorization to sign a non-disclosure agreement with TechSavvy. The purpose of that, TechSavvy is one of the local broadband providers that's in a position to provide applications to submit applications to the province and federal government on our behalf for fiber connectivity grants. So we've already signed an NDA with Cogeco. Previous council felt that was logical because we have some Cogeco infrastructure. However, we believe that the climate, when you look at some of the successful tech-savvy applications in Moravian towns, some other similar communities, we think we're in a better position to have a successful application in conjunction with tech-savvy. that. We've already been through the process of Cogeco. I'm familiar with the process, so we'll do some due diligence and legal review on the NDA, and then we'll just send information to Cogeco so they can prepare an application on our behalf. With the hopeful outcome that we would see grant, and the goal is always that the federal or the provincial and provide enough funding that the project is at no cost to the First Nation, and that we would be able to provide fiber to the home, essentially. So the same kind of fiber you see in a large city. So there's already a successful application in Kettle Point through SpecuLink. Now we had a successful application in Moravian Town. We're teamed up with SWIFT, but the way that is structured, we're not teamed up with any tech savvy proposals through SWIFT. So we think that was just an oversight when they put that particular configuration together. So Amy's kind of had made contact with the executive tech savvy. They're very excited about the opportunity. So we're just asking for motion for you to authorize the non-disclosure.
Questions? Mover and second for the request. Straightforward. Moved by Valerie. Seconder. Marcia. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on.
Okay, the next item, I apologize if it's so open-ended, but we got to get the survey results just to see if Explorement was in a position to provide that service to our community, and apparently they are. I'm not sure if council is excited about the opportunity. Certainly it does raise some questions for Wi-Fi, so I'm happy to just table this until we have more information and someone else to provide me with more direction.
Tell me, I guess, in terms of the viability of the community Wi-Fi, has there been any type of profit loss analysis or break-even analysis on the project? Or projection on the cost to continue on with the operations for the next 3 years, I guess, in terms of pro forma, profit and loss statements going forward?
So we do operate at a loss with community Wi-Fi. The loss has never been accounted for properly because we don't have a full inventory of assets with community Wi-Fi. So we're looking at a loss of around $200,000 a year, but that's because we're not properly accounting for the assets. So if we do that, the loss is probably small, but it's a loss nevertheless. Part of the issue is collection is always an issue. Maybe sustainable if we didn't have any collection issues. But I'd say those are our two larger gaps, is collection issues and not having success accounting for our assets. That answers your question.
Partially, I guess what I'm looking for, what I'm looking for is there a business plan, I guess, for the community Wi-Fi? Are we meeting targets or are we not? There's only a known market on the wall failure. We must have an identifiable break-even to cover our operating costs, salaries, equipment replacement, etc. I'd be interested to see what that is, as opposed to just drawing our oars in the dark here with work that we don't see any type of charted course or any type of new destination in terms of where we're going.
And as far as I know, there was never a business plan put in place, so I couldn't tell you what the break-even point would be. We think we have the ability to provide 6 megabits per second now that we've doubled the bandwidth speed, which does change things, but we really don't know what that means. How many people
guess that's what I'm looking at. There hasn't been any cost analysis, say, for the last 6 years on the operation. And is the gap, I guess, increasing, I guess, in terms of van subsidizing the operation of community-wide parking?
They most certainly have, but it hasn't always been accounted for. So it would take some time to provide what that loss.
I guess we need that, I guess, in terms of balancing the decision whether we go forward with any considerations for exploring. Because if we entertain exploring, then we're definitely going to undermine and I guess, take away the market, I guess, from what one community Wi-Fi is going to ultimately put us in a situation where we're going to have a service that is not going to get anything.
And I think we'll have to take a close look at the survey data, because the elementary school, the families of elementary schools, I don't think the majority of them are using community Wi-Fi, even though we're providing a subsidy. In my opinion, they're not. Just as many or more are using Xplornet, and then you have some with no service at all. That's very common. So it's something close to a third community Wi-Fi, a third Xplornet, and a third something that they rely on LTE. And the LTE tends to be very poor, with a few pockets that we have, and they're exceptional. Community Wi-Fi is poor in some pockets as well. There's many more households that don't have elementary schools, and so it would be very expensive to provide a global Xplornet subsidy. So there's a lot to consider, but when it comes to just looking at how do we provide streaming speed bandwidth to households, Xplornet seems to be the most straightforward solution, but it certainly would have an impact on community Wi-Fi. I'm not quite sure what that is. And will the 6 megabytes per second be streaming speed? Maybe, and I think maybe what we can do is spend the next week talking to the next dimension to try to get a clear idea of what that timeline would look like and what the risks are. I think just leave it there for now. So we have more.
I have a question, regarding the subsidy we approved for, students that are, online. If they have a better, the brand has one or whatever, and it's working, will they get reimbursed for the bills? Like, how is that working?
And that's not what we've put in place. It would be essentially a subsidy to cover our losses in community Wi-Fi to those dollars, but we subsidize the installation fee. We don't charge a monthly fee, and we would also forgive their account. So it looks differently. So we haven't entertained that in terms of giving officers members the option of a cash reimbursement. So that would impact us. Sure. Something that we're considering here. Cash reimbursement.
I understand what you're saying, if you're taking from one pocket and putting it in the other pocket. But the purpose of the promotion was to provide, some financial assistance to families that the children, have to learn online for whatever reason. So if that's not the case, then why did we make that motion?
So to take the $60 per family that we're subsidizing for community Wi-Fi, that doesn't get you very far with Xplornet. So you would have to subsidize more on a household basis, or you have a more complicated scenario where we would say we're going to subsidize up to this much for Xplornet. So that's something we can look at. Certainly, we wouldn't see the global savings if it was every family for themselves, because they would have to pay for the install for Xplornet as well. So with the batch service, they would waive that for us. I guess at the end of the day, we're gonna subsidize service, whether it's through community Wi-Fi or Xplornet. It's cheaper to do it all at once than to give out a subsidy. Because there's some savings in economy of scale. And for Xplornet, that's where you can install things, which is fine.
So with all that, what's the plan going forward with this?
I think what we could do, if council approve, if we find enough gaps in service with community Wi-Fi, we look at Xplornet, for family development. Or all.
So basically, you're saying, here in this one that is a lot more reliable. So if we're going to go with Xplornet, then all the families that have with the Wi-Fi, we're going to cancel that and go with Xplornet. So I don't see, is that what we're aiming for?
It's one option. You know, I still think what we should do is try to get a firmer idea on whether doubling the download speed for families is going to have the impact we're looking for. But we don't know.
Eric, what do you think?
It depends what you want to do with the internet, like Marcia mentioned, you know, to have streaming capabilities for students that might need to use Zoom or some other platform to do their schoolwork. I think that would make everyone more accountable. So I think you would want to have a stronger, definitely a stronger network to do more things. And I think it's a good solution compared to what is out there right now. Like in the quick, I think it's good.
Well, I think there should be some testing done. Xplornet, we had Xplornet, and it wasn't that much faster than our Wi-Fi, and at times it blanked out during storms as well. There was lag times. My son, officer, he was using Google Meet or something. It was like a Zoom platform, it was Google. And so it wouldn't always link up either. So within Wi-Fi at that day, that wasn't working, it worked all right. So I think you're gonna have to get something to be measured by, because on that side of the island, all the Xplornet's good on this side. You gotta go that way or down that way. It's just some thought.
It is even noted in the quote here, please note that service and packages available in your exact location may vary based on signal quality and network conditions.
Either do you have a Xplornet?
No, I got it.
Because somebody has a Xplornet, because they said they don't get the connection. You get good service?
I got Xplornet, but it's the direct face-to-face from the water tower in Wallaceburg. I don't have any problems at all. It's not the satellite, it's the face-to-face.
Do they do the face-to-face?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you think our survey data will give us an idea in terms of, here's an area in the island where LTE seems to be working, here's an area where community Wi-Fi seems to be working, here's an area where Xplornet seems to be working? Because that may need to be the approach. We're really looking at some services work well in some areas or some don't. Will we have that level of detail?
It should. So we're asking people like, what service are you using? Is it reliable? Who's your service provider? How's your cell service in this area? Do you get LTE? Do you get 3G? So it is fairly comprehensive. We'll be able to we'll be able to overlay a map that says, okay, Xplornet works here, LTE works here, nothing works here, with an internet works here. We will be able to get that level of information. But it still will take a bit of time because we're behind 2 weeks now. in surveying.
Yes.
The drawback with community Wi-Fi is right now we're capped at 3. And once you double it, it's not as though we're a company, we've doubled it in many communities. I could foresee problems going to that person. Maybe, maybe not. Exploring that, you can buy packages going all the way up, right? You can have service as good as we're getting. So that's the difference. You're not going to catch a free thing with lifetime.
James, can you find out whether it's gonna be what Charles has or what is it satellite? What are they proposing?
Maybe we see if they can come and do some testing and give us a better idea of whether this can be done.
So where are we at?
Table it.
After all that?
James is gonna bring us more information.
And a coverage map.
We got far enough, I wanted to bring it to council just in case maybe you don't like it. So just wanted to make sure I'm on the right track.
Yeah, and the bigger question is, do we damage, I guess, the profitability or potential profitability of offline and community Wi-Fi, even entertainment?
I have that concern as well, but subsidizing our own service is obviously more sustainable than cash out. Okay, so the next item, this is a request from a band member, Eddie Albert. And he's wondering if you can do some filming at the ball bank. And without a policy in place, I have to bring it to council. So this is looking for council approval to do some filming for his study.
What's the subject of the study?
Subject of the study is film.
How to shoot it or how to develop?
How to vote.
Who are second for the request?
What kind of film is he making?
Correct.
I mean, we're due diligence, right? We need to know this. And liability issues.
Sure.
I know some knowledge about, I have some information about the film. Tay Elvez, he's my cousin. Shiloh Sony was his mother. So that's who Tay is. And I'm actually auditioning for the role of Uncle tomorrow. I think he wrote the role for me. No. And, but it's a student film, and I think it's in the horror genre. So that's,
So is he a student?
yeah, he's graduating, I think, from Ryerson, and that's his thesis. I don't know. That's a good question.
So this is just gonna help him with his graduation.
Yeah.
What about liability? Is he signing up for liability or?
Oh, yeah, James will prepare the appropriate release, I guess.
He was real nice.
Moved by Tyler, second, Cody, all those in favor? Carried. That's with respect to the, how did you say his first name again?
Tay,
Tay Elvis?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, the last item is to appoint our new Ontario Works supervisors and the Ontario Works administrators so that you can act as the administrators with payments and with their interactions with the problem.
Over a second, straightforward, moved by Elaine, second by Marcia, all those in favor?
Question. You need to put in there that the delivery is in accordance with the legislation of Ontario Works. Because where does our societal norms in First Nations? This is a provincial policy. So are they our funding for us?
Absolutely, very alert. Big time.
It's heavily regulated. But they do provide probably the most flexibility of our provincial program. But we essentially, the shared services agreement.
Can we put in accordance with relevant legislation?
I think this is a specific requirement, isn't it, for Ontario Works?
I don't know if I would touch them now, just given, you know, a number of things that have been on hold before we have this in place. That's my, you may have heard about on the other end.
No.
As a contract, we need to-
Information is in place.
How long is the contract? Why are we superseding? Is that something standard? Or superseding the previous appointments?
Yes, the previous one would be Charlie and Altman, and then Cindy kicked off the program. So just to ensure that that's clear, that we don't have more than one material.
Tell me what would happen if we didn't pass it.
You didn't pass it? I would be signing a lot of paperwork and making a lot of calls to the.
Can I have a mover and seconder for this? It's straightforward. Moved by Elaine, second by Marcia, all those in favor? Carried. Making a mountain over a mountain. Any other business? One.
Are we getting an executive assistant for James? Someone who knows? I don't know, it's just, I seem like every time somebody works with the director of operations, it's somebody, maybe, I don't know, someone that has, oh, I don't want to say. Right? I know. I just want to know if we can get an executive assistant. I know he has somebody, but you're doing all these things now.
Go ahead, James.
I have an executive assistant. I've been told the previous council budgeted for 2. So I.
Develop the job descriptions and report back with the recommended salary. So we're gonna implement. Amy,
I just have one other business. I got a text from Lee, who's not available tonight, but he wanted to put it on the table that the marsh roads leading to the boat ramps are not accessible, and it's causing major difficulties with guiding because there's only one boat ramp that people can use. And he wondered if it's something that could be, there's 6 weeks of the hunting season left, and he wondered if it was something that could be flagged as a priority item.
Who's on the launch committee?
Actually, maybe have Scott look into there's another boat launch towards Shawnees. If they could have maybe Public Works laid out a little bit of gravel that just tide them over so they could get another boat launch mixed, just as a secondary look at. It's
One way down.
the main, well, right now, we have no dynamite cut. That road's, they burned it over. There's 3 spots on that road that need to be filled in, raised up a bit, and then it's a go ahead. But for some reason, it's filled in, burned over. Nobody nobody can go down Dynamite Cut, so everybody's using Johnson River, Johnson boat launch. We got farmers and young kids, 4x4s, just ripping that road up. So it's hard for our duck hunters to get out there to make some money. So there's another boat launch further down by Shogman, which it's a little farther to get out to the lake. But those are the only ways we can get our boats in right now. I've been asking for years for help out there. Public Works to see if they can take care of the road. That's one of the main reasons why that's failing up there. Somebody dug it up, didn't inquire on what it would have, the impact would be, and they destroyed that whole bunch. So I know a lot of concerned hunters that they can't get out there. Maybe we could talk to our public works supervisors and come up with some help for this, for a plan for your hunters over there at the end of that season.
Jake, would you require a motion for that? This is an operation.
Find a motion for Dynamite Cut, actually.
Yeah.
Because if that's a priority, council will have that.
Yeah, it's only,
Nice to have the motion, because
Dynamite Cut, all you gotta do is bring 3 scoops of dirt back onto the road and level it off, and then you back up the cut.
I think a lot of people got stuck back on Dynamite Cut.
Yeah,
And that was very,
yeah.
and so it made maybe part of the reason why.
The bad one was Black Shack. Dynamite Cut was kind of that was our secret getaway to the casual hunter. Was Dynamite Cut will cruise down into walks of shade. Black Shack, we had a lot of jeopardized vehicles from Aboriginal community coming over there, parking their boats, smashing up some windows, stealing some stuff, making it look like our community doing that to duck hunters. When in fact, it's weird. There's a lot of tricks they got over there to make us look bad. Yeah, those 2 roads need to be taken care of.
Okay, Ryan.
Just a little history lesson, those roads were always nice. You're paying for what's for the convenience of the hunters, because right now, I remember as a kid riding on those boats from way up here, or down here, or by Shawnee's. And we drive all the way down and jump across the ice and walk in and or walk. Why those as high as it is now, not even in the marshes, because they weren't big. But that being said, I think the reason why those things were put up was there was breaches in the dikes in the marshes past year. And breaches coming threatened the main part of the island, so we blocked off some of those areas because that was a strategy to keep the main corridor of the island safe, because the water kept coming up very high and there was breaches in dikes areas, so the farmers and the technology and public works all work together to strategize to save what was out there. There's a lot of starting to come. And by the end of Dynamite Cut, there never used to be a boat launch, but people just started making it, dumping it in on the Goose Lake side. And so now, because of the water, it's washed away, it's almost like it was like a deep pit. And if you, even with a truck, 4x4, if you went in there, you just drop right down and go in. And I did see a couple trucks get stuck in there right there. It was all because some of the muskrats and stuff would go in there, rain and whatever. I don't know if you can do it now. I don't know if there's any breaches in the dike now or not. I haven't been down there because it requires a boat. And so I don't know what's on Johnson Bay side either as well, because that's one of the famous breaches always would be on that side over there. So and I know they got on the Johnson side, they got it blocked off. We just called by Jack Wicks or Charlie Wicks ponds or where you want. They're on that corner. And so that was, it's blocked off right there, so you can go Anyways.
James?
So I think what I'll do is I'll see what can be prioritized in the existing work plan, and then I'll bring the report back so that we get the ability to prioritize what can be done.
What can you actually do?
Well. So the main issue is the road down the boat ramp on Johnson. That's the main issue.
They're having issues right at the boat launch, and the road going to the boat launch. A lot of traffic, and that's the only point of that.
This is the boat launch we're working on. Down
Yeah,
there.
and you can't go back to the Black Shack, so it's the main, right after the Quantum, before it turns to the line, that boat launch right there. Johnson River is the main one to utilize. Dynamite cutting used to, a lot of our hunters used to use dynamite cutting because they could go into Bruce Lake and go to Johnson Bay, and bring it up to the Vail to the lake. So it was, that two boat launches there. People that were hunting the marsh, like now, I got one in the marsh, and it took me 3 hours to get to the berm. So it's, that berm's cutting off a lot of action for a hiker.
Well, I'll have to talk to Scott to find out what the quickest solution would be.
Okay, James, we'll follow up on that and, motion to adjourn. Ron? Second, Jody, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard somebody got.
Where would you think?
I remember them now when we wrote that.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Come up here.
Come on, please.